Alien Covenant is the sequel to Prometheus and the prequel to Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, and Alien Resurrection. It is directed yet again by Ridley Scott and stars Catherine Waterston, Michael Fassbender, Danny McBride, and a bunch of other characters that you will probably grow not to give a shit about. It centers around the crew of a ship called the Covenant that investigates a planet that seems habitable, but, surprise, it's not. So, if you can't tell by my clear enthusiasm for this movie, I was not a big fan of it. I wouldn't call myself a fan of the Alien franchise, because what do you define as the Alien franchise? It's not a great franchise. It's Alien and Aliens are obviously both phenomenal, and then Prometheus, I respect more than I like. I wouldn't say I like it, but I don't hate it. That movie gets a lot of shit, but I also see where the people that don't like it are coming from. I don't enjoy it, but I don't hate it. I would say Prometheus is a better movie than Alien Covenant, and I'll get into why. But let me start with what I did like, because there are things. There are some cool I'm gonna keep trying. There are some cool moments in this movie. I'd be lying to you if I said there wasn't. There are. And it seems that Ridley Scott, no matter how bad of a movie he'll make, he's good at making it so there's always at least something enjoyable going on. And I think part of that, in this movie at least, is due to the hard R. This is a hard R. You look at something like Prometheus, and if it wasn't for that baby birthing scene, which is still, gives me nightmares, it probably would be a PG-13, but this is a hard R. When there's gore, good lord, there's gore. And in a way, it was refreshing, because a lot of movies now are holding back from that and going, we gotta rein in the money, we gotta keep it PG-13 so everyone can come see this. At least Ridley Scott is self-aware. At least he knows his franchise is gonna make a lot of money, whether it's R or not, so he's willing to go the full distance. He's also 76 years old and is probably made hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars and doesn't need to make that much more. But I think a lot of the good moments come from that bit, a lot of violence and a lot of gore, and I'm not one that's I want to see blood and shit all over the place, but in a movie like this, you sort of need that, and the best moments, the most intense moments, the most moments that grip you, come from that, and I think that was very key in playing into the parts that worked in this movie. A couple performances stood out to me. Michael Fassbender as David, not as Walter, as David, was solid. Not as good as he was in Prometheus, but he was good. And then Billy Crudup as the captain, he was good. I enjoyed his performance. I like Billy Crudup, or however, Crudup, I don't know. He's a very good actor, and I think he's underrated, and a lot of that is because he doesn't show up very often. But, I'm going to get more into the performance side of things later, but those were the only two that I was they did their job. Billy Crudup was the only character that I was if something happens to this guy, I'll actually give a shit, because he portrayed him in a likable way. I didn't really like many of the other characters. At least Billy Crudup came forward and became likable, and Michael Fassbender put on mannerisms and whatever he had to do to the point where I was yes, he's human-like, but he's still a robot. That's what he did well in Prometheus, and while I stand by it wasn't as good in this movie, he still did a good job in this movie. I'm going to get into the visual side of it, because that's what this movie does best. Visually and technically, this movie is very solid. Specifically with two things. The production design. The production design is fantastic. There are set pieces in this movie that are just beautiful. There are vistas in this movie that are just beautiful. There are some shots that really took me aback and were awe-inspiring. They did a great job with the production design and where they decided to shoot and the locations that they went to. It's a great looking movie, and there's always something visually appealing that I'm looking at. And that also lends itself to the cinematography of this film and the actual shooting of the movie and how they used the production design to their advantage. I would say the cinematography is great for everything except for 3 scenes. And those 3 scenes happen to be the 3 action scenes. And I can't tell you what the fuck is going on in any of those 3 scenes for my life. I have no idea. They are just the most shaky, I have no clue what happened during those scenes. I think someone died in the first one. Because then later they go, we've lost blank amount of crew members, and I was like, who is the other one? And then there's one fight scene between two people that you can't see shit. And I guess the third one is, like, you can kind of see what's going on, but there are a lot of those moments. But as a whole, looking at the movie as the whole thing, the cinematography worked for most of the time. And I, especially the opening scene is just a beautiful looking scene, and it was very promising. I was like, okay, I like where we're going with this. And then it just kind of plunges. That's what I liked about let's get into what I didn't like. The majority of the performances in this movie are not good. And I don't know if I'd blame the actors because they have absolutely nothing to work with. They are not given something to have a good performance with in this movie. And the one that I'll point to most certainly as being the worst performance that I noticed right from the get-go and was consistent the entire time was Katherine Waterston. She is really not good in this movie. She had a bad performance in this movie. And again, she wasn't given much to work with, but I do think part of it was her acting. And she's a good actress. She was very good in Steve Jobs. And there's another movie I know I saw her in that I can't name it right now, but she was very good. She just weeps and sobs and bitches and moans her way through this movie, and it is so goddamn annoying. I don't think there's one scene she's in this movie where she's not crying. And the debate could be made that she is the lead of this movie. People could argue Michael Fassbender. I would probably argue her, actually. But Jesus Christ, like, you compare her to someone like Sigourney Weaver in Alien and Aliens, and she's spectacular in both of those movies. She can bring emotion, and she's also badass. I'll prove it to you. She was nominated for an Oscar for Aliens. And for movies like Aliens, that shit doesn't really happen. You don't see a whole lot of performance nominations being thrown out to those kinds of movies. This just, like, they tried to give her emotion, and they tried to give her layers from the beginning, but there was no development or setup to the point where I didn't care about what happened there. And then she wasn't badass. She never really does that much until the end. Like, she's just kind of there. I couldn't tell you what her job was in this crew. I don't know why she was here. I don't know what she had to do. I don't know what she was there for. If you put a different character in that position, I think you would have had the same fucking outcome in this movie that you had having her character in there. So again, I don't know if I'd blame Katherine Waterston 100% for her performance, but there's obviously blame to be given. I guess I'll kind of use that to get to my next point, the characters. There are none. The character is a word that is non-existent in this movie. These are just pawns that are put there to move the story forward and eventually pretty much die. Because, let's be real, you're going into an Alien movie, not a lot of people are going to make it. And they had the same job to do with Rogue One, to make you give a shit about the characters so that eventually when a bunch of them fucking die, you care. And I didn't care. I never cared. Because there is not only no development of characters, there couldn't be. Because there's no setup to begin with. There are no characters in this movie. These are just actors playing random parts. Danny McBride plays himself. There is no fucking character work in this movie because there are no characters to begin with. They try and do something. The second scene of this movie, something happens to a crew member and they try to have it affect everyone, but I didn't care because that was the first time I had met any of them. So I didn't give a shit. And then from there was no foundation, so they couldn't build the damn house. I didn't care. I didn't care about a single one of these characters. And then as the movie goes on and they become more annoying and there becomes less and less development and their dialogue gets worse and worse, it made me hate them more and more. There are no characters in this movie. I don't know how many times I can say it before it sinks in. It is infuriating to watch all of these people on screen because at the end of the day, you don't really give a shit. I was pulling for basically everyone in Alien and Aliens to survive. When I say basically, I mean basically. I didn't want everyone to survive. They'd be doing it wrong if you wanted everyone to survive. But, like, I wanted Bill Paxton to make it out of Aliens because he was fucking awesome in Aliens and he was hilarious and you like him as a character because he's a goddamn character. There are no characters. And that, like, lends itself to a problem with the movie as a whole. There's no setup. There's no development. Things just happen in this movie. There is no coherency to this film. There's no consistency to this film. It's just sporadic things happening to pawns that you don't care about. The structure and the pacing of this movie is all over the place. The pacing especially, like I said, there are 3 action scenes in this 2 hour and 2 minute long, what is listed as a horror action thriller, basically, is what this movie's trying to be. 3 action scenes. And those, and I shouldn't say action scenes, 3 tension scenes. And the issue is, and they're good. They're good. Those 3, except for not being able to see anything, they're good scenes, and they're up there in tension. And then they just shoot you right back down, and nothing interesting happens for 45 minutes. And then they try and launch you right back up, and it just feels off. That's another thing with the structure of this movie. It's like scenes are put in places where they shouldn't be, and there are a lot of things happening at the end where it's like just end the movie. There's so much dumb shit placed in the wrong part of the movie, plus weird pacing, and that you're not getting into it. It's not flowing correctly. It's choppy. You're completely taken out of the movie. There are so many things working just to bring you out of the movie when there are promising moments that actually get you interested. The movie is literally contradicting every move it takes. And that's what's so infuriating about it. Some of the CGI even was not good. Like, specifically with the aliens, there are a couple of moments where it was like, did you spend all of your graphics budget on, like, the set pieces? Because, like the xenomorph and then the other 2, I think they called them, like, neomorphs. They never say it, but you see it in the credits. I don't know if that's a thing or if I just don't remember that. I don't remember that. They didn't look great, especially when they were up close. And I think what's cool about Alien, and what I will say is a lot of horror movies back in, like, the 70s and 80s, they were practical. You look at Jaws, and you look at Alien, and you look at, what's the one I'm thinking of? Nightmare on Elm Street. They're more practical than their computer graphics, and you notice those movies are relatively more frightening than a lot of the horror movies that come out now. Because terror is different than just seeing this big fucking thing running up at you. Terror is not knowing what's going to happen next. It's being on the edge of your seat. That's what's so cool about Alien and the horror that Alien brings, is that this thing could be anywhere at any given point. In this movie, it's just a big CGI monster that you always see coming. And it sort of takes the scariness of Alien and tosses it out the window. It's the same thing with The Shining. A lot of people give it shit nowadays for not being scary. I think that's completely inaccurate. I think that it's terrifying. Every time Danny turns the corner on that tricycle, I'm frightened because I don't know what's going to be around that corner. It's not about big jump scares or big monsters coming out at you. It's about the terror of it, and it's about what's leading up to it. They don't have that in this movie because they just make it the big CGI monsters. And I don't usually care about things being CGI. If it looks good, cool. If they want to make Star Wars with CGI, make it look good at least. They couldn't even do that. But, like, you have to just think about what works practically and what works with CGI. And if anyone was going to get that, I really thought it would be Ridley Scott. Especially considering I think this is the first time you see a xenomorph in daylight, and it looks bad. Like, it looks just out of place and kind of gross. And then there's one more thing I have to say, I think. Oh, yeah, just, like, a lot of bad, generic movie stuff. A lot of shit is cliche. They pull a lot out of the movie book. Like, the oldest trick that they could possibly pull, I think Ridley Scott thought that his audience was a lot more stupid than they really were, to the point where you're sitting there going, yeah, that's obviously going to happen in 20 minutes. Does he really think we're not going to know that? One of the points to where it was actually like something would happen, and I thought it was general knowledge in the movie that was what was happening, and then they reveal it later, and I went, oh, that was supposed to be like a reveal. Okay. It was cliche and thus predictable. Which is weird because in a way I have the same problem I have with this movie that I have with life. And it's too fucking much like Alien. This is a template in a way. And they throw in more cliche. I didn't think that was possible. But they managed to do it. Guys, overall, I didn't like this movie. It's not horrendous, but shit, it's not good. It's a pretty bad movie. And I'd stay away from it, personally. If you're perfectly sufficient with watching Alien and Aliens and going, I like the Alien franchise, like I do, this movie is not necessary. It's not going to add to anything for you. If you stayed away from Prometheus, like I don't want to see any more Alien, you're not going to like this movie. But if you're someone that likes all of the Alien movies, because there are people that like Alien Resurrection, they live among us. They're in hiding, but they live among us. You'll probably like this thing, because you really like Alien. And it's, you know, again, it's got good moments, and technically it's nice, but it doesn't make up for all of the bad movie shit that is consistently happening the entire time. So, what did you guys think? Did you see Alien Covenant? Did you not see Alien Covenant? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you all next time.